Welcome students. In today's class, we are going to read about the different parts of a particular flower and what are some of the variations present in those parts and the function of those parts. Calyx or sepal is the outermost hole of a flower. It is usually green in color, but sometimes it can be brightly colored as well. In some flowers like gulmohar, we can see brightly colored sepals and those are called petaloid sepals. Calyx are usually 5 in number. Some might be higher in 5 as well. Now the calyx or the other different parts of the calyx can be joined together, which is called gamosepalous calyx, and they might be separated from each other totally, which are called polysepalous calyx. The example of gamosepalous calyx includes the hibiscus. As we can see that all of the parts of the calyx are joined together, but in the rose, as we can see, all the parts of the calyx are separated from each other. So it's an example of polysepalous calyx. In hibiscus, there might be some other part at the base of the calyx, which is called the apicalyx. Now, since they are green in color, the main function of the calyx is that it can do photosynthesis, and in the bud situation, it is also protecting the young bud. Left hand side picture is of a hibiscus flower, and we can also see the apicalyx lobe. Apicalyx is a single part which is also present in some of the flowers at the base of the sepal. And in the right hand side picture, there is the picture of a petaloid perianth in gulmohar. As we can see that at the base of the petals, there are the sepals or the calyx which are not green in color but red in color. So they are called the petaloid perianth or petaloid sepals. The second hole of the flower is called corolla or the petals. Just like the sepals, the corolla or the petals might also be joined together, in which case they are called gamopetalous, and in some cases they might be totally separated from each other, which are called polypetalous. The upper picture is of polypetalous corolla and the lower picture is of gamopetalous corolla. Now there can be a single layer of petals in a flower, there might be double layer of petals in a flower, and in some flowers the petals might be spirally arranged. And since the petals are the most brightly colored part of the flower, they attract the insects which are helping in pollination of the flowers. And they are also protecting the stamen and pistil, which are the innermost hole of the flower. In the left hand side, we have the picture of a poppy flower in which we can find double or multiple layers of corolla or the petals. And on the right hand side, there is a picture of a flower which has spiral arrangement of the petals or corolla. The third hole or the inner hole after the corolla is the androecium, which is also called the stamens or the male reproductive part of the flower. The number of stamens that are present in a flower may vary from one flower to another. Now, if we are just looking at a single stamen, there are two parts of the stamen. One is the filament, which is a long stalk-like structure. And at the upper portion of the long stalk-like filament, there is one lobe-like structure attached, which is called the anther. Now, anther is having two lobes and each lobe is containing a pollen sac. Inside the pollen sac, there are pollen grains. And pollen grains are going to germinate themselves and then fertilization will happen. In the right hand side picture, there is the magnified picture of the pollen grain and the pollen sac and the two lobes of the anther. On the basis of arrangement of the stamens, the flower can be of three types. First one or the first picture, we can see that all the stamens are totally separated from each other. They are having a single very thin red colored stalk, and at the top of that they are having are yellow colored, anther attached. This type of pollen grains and the type of stamen that are totally single and not attached to each other are called monadelphous stamen. Example is China rose. In the second picture or the right hand side picture, we can see that there are a group of stamen which are totally grouped together and joined at their bases, and a single stamen is totally separated from that bunch. This type of stamen is found in pea and this is called diadelphous stamen. And in some of the flowers, the stamens might be bunched into multiple groups. Just as the picture shown in this slide, this is an example of bombax flower or the flower of cotton plant. So this type of stamen in which there are multiple groups of stamens, these are called the polyadelphous stamen. The fourth and the innermost hole of the flower is called gynesium or pistil or the female reproductive part of the flower. It is also having different parts. At the top of it, it is having a stigma which might have some feathery appearance in some of the flowers. An example picture is given in the right side. Then there is a stalk which is connecting the stigma with the ovary at the base. So that stalk is called style. And ovary is the swollen base portion of the gynesium, inside of which there are ovules, and the pollen grains from the andrecium are going to come inside the ovary or ovary wall and going to fertilize the ovules. And then the fruits are going to happen. So this is the structure of the gynesium or the female reproductive part of the flower. The flowers in which all the four floral holes are present, like the sepal, the petal, andrecium and gynesium, those are called the complete flower, just like the flower given in the picture. Hibiscus or China rose is one example of complete flower. Now, all of these parts, four parts, can be divided into two types. Some of them are called essential parts. Those are actually the parts taking part in reproduction. Those parts include andrecium and gynesium. And non-essential parts are the accessory parts which are helping the reproductive parts in different ways. Those are called the non-essential parts, and it includes calyx and corolla. So complete flower is the flower in which we can find all the four floral holes. Incomplete flower is the flower in which one or more of the four floral holes are missing. In the picture, both the flowers are of pumpkin plant, but the left hand side plant or left hand side flower is missing the gynesium and the right hand side flower is missing the andrecium. But they are grown on the same plant, but they are missing one of the floral holes. So they are called the incomplete flowers.